Hello, everybody. Retire on Series is back. Many of you have asked for updates. I was bombarded with questions after my video on Wednesday, and I talked about the power of CAGRs in light of MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, and people were blown away by that and asked a lot of subsequent questions. So I decided to answer those questions, but weave it into a Retire on update as well, because the questions are about multiple assets. And the power of CAGR is very real. This one is called Unlocking the Power of Killer CAGRs. And again, even though I've been talking about this for years, it always gets me excited. So I hope it gets you excited too. Let's jump into the story today. And thank you to everybody for being here, mods in the chat and the people behind me and everything else. So first of all, I got a clicker too. Awesome. Not financial advice, of course. And thank you to everybody on Patreon. Woohoo, Polly. Woohoo, Patreon. Thank you for being here. Now, what inspired this video and the questions was a couple of slides I had in the deck where I compared the outlook for Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, Saylor's presentation. And the point here is the CAGR, compound annual growth rate. And people don't quite understand how something can go from 80,000 to 13.4 million in a relatively short window of time. But that's because of the miracle of compounding. We'll break that down in great detail. The other slide that people were interested in is my sandbag model, where I talked about my price targets and then backed into the CAGRs and backed into the CAGRs for Saylor's Bitcoin prices too. And this is what got people by surprise. So this is kind of the miracle of compounding right here. And it shows you the insane difference between 20.28%. It takes 82K to 3 million. 27% takes 82K to 13 million. And 32% takes 82K to 49 million. That is not a big difference, but massive amplification of returns. By just being off by a couple of percentage over multiple years, the result is astounding. So, part one of the question, shout out to Chewie. Chewie does a lot for us in the community, and his family and wife and kids are all very well. But Chewie, first part is inspired by the video today. What's the CAGR for following in 5 years, if later possible, of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, and Tesla? Thank you. I like the way you are thinking, because everything changes every day. All the prices of all these assets change, and some get very oversold, some get very overbought, some are extreme value, some are very expensive, and we'll answer that right now as well. So let's spend a minute first talking about CAGR and how important it is and how these amplifications actually take effect. So first of all, compound annual growth rate. A 7% CAGR, you invest $1,000 at 7% annual return. After 1 year, you got 1,070. If you're in a place where they tax your returns, then that goes down. But of course, we'll ignore that for now. In year 2, you earn 7% on the 1,070. That becomes 1,144. And over time, this becomes substantial. After 30 years, that $1,000 becomes $7,600. What happens if we tweak the CAGR just a little bit? And this goes back to friend of the channel, Albert Einstein. Einstein's 8th wonder of the world. 10% CAGR, $1,000, doubles to 2,000 in about 7.2 years. This is the rule of 72, which if you went to finance school, you'd know this rule. 72 divided by 10 is 7.2. And what's even crazier, in 36 years, it grows to over 32,000. 32 times the original amount without adding a single extra dollar. Now, the CAGR miracle and Einstein's 8th wonder of the world are two sides of the exact same coin. So I refer to them interchangeably in this video. And just bear that in mind too. CAGR, 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 very important number. And I'll explain why now. This is a very simple little stock called Costco. I shop there. It's a great place, great store. No frills, no fuss. Everything they have is pretty good quality. And this is the Costco stock from approximately 1987 to today. Okay, the CAGR is only 9.7%, but this turns $100 invested back in 1997 to 67 grand, or 10,000 becomes nearly $7 million. Okay, and this shows you the importance of entering positions in fundamentally strong companies early and maintain that conviction, hold on to the winners. And if they are winners over decades, you harness the power of compounding growth. I repeat, let your winners ride, and this can happen. 10 grand, 7 million, not bad. And 1987 was not that long ago. And this isn't exactly a disruption stock. They sell, what do they sell? Pretty much everything. Garden hoses to spinach to blueberries to detergents, everything. Toilet paper. In fact, it's a good place to buy toilet paper. Anyhow, back to the miracle. Before we get into the math of all the models, I'll stress this again because per Albert Einstein, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Hard assets, holding disruption, even holding Home Depot or Costco can be very revolutionary. All right, let's get into the questions. Answer Chewie's part first, and then we have a special guest as well coming. The 4 chosen assets: Tesla, Bitcoin, Strategy, which is MicroStrategy, the new logo, and Solana. First of all, this is the risk curve. Okay, I've shared this before. I'll share it again. It's very, very important to understand all the assets here are very risky, but also the returns are very high. So sometimes, even if one of these 4 blows up and goes to zero, you're going to make it back on the rest in spades, way more than you would holding an ETF or a mutual fund or some stodgy company that's going nowhere. But here, it's important to note is I do believe Bitcoin is the least amount of risk. Tesla, second least amount. MicroStrategy is riskier than Bitcoin. And Solana is riskier than all of them together. Okay, but let's see how the CAGR shape up based on all my prediction models, which are also pretty sandbagged as well. And warning, I'll repeat this again. Everything can go to zero. All right, don't assume any of these things will be around in 5 years. They may not be. So have your tap dancing shoes and get ready to bounce if there's any sign of danger or risk. All right, getting into the CAGR calculations, part 1. I did this 2 ways. I went out to 2030 and then went out to 2032 because I believe going out to 2035 is a little bit too far out. So we'll just keep it there for now and just show you a couple of things that I think about all the time when I allocate my capital. My goals are not your goals, but here are the CAGRs to 2030 based on my sandbag prediction price targets. So Bitcoin currently 80 grand. I believe conservatively it'll get to at least $622,782 by 2030. That is 6 years from now, give or take a couple of quarters, 1 quarter to be precise. The CAGR rate for this to happen is 40.78. I double check all my math, and that's the calculated rate at the back end. Then MicroStrategy, the target 6 years from now, $2,489. CAGR of that is higher than Bitcoin, 45.9. Then Tesla, 235 current price. CAGR to get to my sandbag target, $4,794 in 6 years is 65.3%. Solana, $120 price right now. CAGR, 61.8% to get to $2,153. So all of these numbers, they don't really make any sense until you put them in perspective. And that'll be answered in the second part. But I created a visual of what these look like. And here you can clearly see Tesla has the largest CAGR if my price predictions are right. And also, by the way, I hope to be around in 5 years and we can check my numbers. But, I've made predictions before. They're normally pretty good because I'd spend a lot of time on them and I sandbag them. So normally I undershoot. But remember, you can hit a prediction, then it can revert back down again. The point is, if it does hit that prediction, sell it, get out, or hold it if it's still a winning asset too. But here you can see number 2 is Solana, 61.8%. MicroStrategy is number 3, 45.9% CAGR. Bitcoin, 40.78%. And I've said since 4th of July, 2024, Financial Independence Day here on this channel, I said, I believe Tesla will outperform Bitcoin by 2032. And the whole world is like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. Well, Tesla was at 160 then. It went to 485 within 5 months. So yeah, crazy things can happen, but then it mean reverted because that's what happens too. So I always say seatbelts on, especially if you're in these disruptive assets. That's the first part, by the way, 2032. Let's look at 2030. Let's look at 2032 because it's very different. Very different too. So Bitcoin, I believe, could go from $80,000 up to $987,000 in 2032, 8 years from now. That's a CAGR of 36.9%. Notice how the CAGR has fallen from the target to 2030. That's what happens. Okay? Over time, the CAGR falls. MicroStrategy, 44% CAGR, get to 4,770, which is a lot higher than the 2,489. But those years become crazy. Remember this chart? Things go vertical because of the miracle of compounding. Not that these become faster horses. Remember that too. Also, Tesla, 235, CAGR 55.2%, getting to just shy of $8,000 in 2032. It could be a little high, could be a little low. A lot of people are calling for 10,000 by 2030. A lot of people, in fact, really good experts like CERN and Joe and others. And then Solana, 120, going to nearly $3,000 by 2032. You've got firms like VanEck say it's $3,000 by 2030, but again, or 3,200, I think, by 2030, but I sandbag mine. Anyhow, but Solana may not even be around because things are changing so fast. But if it is, and it continues its dominating position, this is easily achievable. CAGR 49.35%. And a visual of all of these, again, the biggest CAGR, fastest CAGR is still Tesla 55.2, but it's down from this one of 65.3. Also, Solana down from 61 to 49, MicroStrategy down to 44, and Bitcoin down from 40 to 36.9. So that is the story so far, but there's more. So the question I always get too is people still are doing the right thing. They're building targets. And the shout out to Sanjay's son, not Sanjay. Sanjay pings me. He said, my eldest regarding Tesla shares. So they're going back and forth. I'm telling Sanjay 220. Yeah, bought a lot of Tesla. But what do you think? He talks to his son. His son says, okay, I don't have any. I have a little Bitcoin. I have a little Solana. I don't have any Tesla. I want to have $1 million by the time of 2030. How many Tesla shares do I need? So this one's for you. No names will be disclosed, of course. So first of all, 2030 and then 2032, because this is going to be very important because I'm going to showcase the importance of holding on as long as you can as well. So let's jump into these numbers. Cost to be a millionaire by 2030 by investing today. Okay, Bitcoin's 80 grand. To get to $1 million worth of Bitcoin, you need 1.6 Bitcoin today. The cost today is 128 grand. MicroStrategy, you need 401 shares. The cost today is 260. That'll cost you 104 grand. It's cheaper to buy MicroStrategy than Bitcoin to get to $1 million because of the accretion. Okay? People always trip up on this. Like, you get 8x the amount of Satoshis per share if you invested in 2020 when they started the Bitcoin strategy versus today. Every time they buy, you get more sats per share. Remember that. That's why it is a slightly faster horse if the NAV premium continues at 1.5 or so, give or take a little bit. That's the important part here. Tesla, current price today is 235. Units, you need 208 shares. So for Sanjay's son, he needs 208 shares to be a millionaire by 2030. But that will cost you $48,927. It's a lot. When I was doing the retire on cocktail and Tesla was like $106, it was a lot more fun. It's more expensive now, but it's also more than half off what it was a couple of weeks ago, which is crazy, crazy. And this is why people are so upset. They're not accustomed to this violent volatility that'll break your teeth. But when you're old like me, you're just used to it. It's par for the course. Anyhow, final one, 2030, Solana. You need 465 tokens. It'll cost you 55 grand, and that'll get you to $1 million if any of these assets are still around. Remember that. Now, let's look at 2032. And there's a method to the madness here. So, cost to be a millionaire. Oh, this is 2030. This shows you what I just covered, 2030. 128 grand for Bitcoin, 104,000 for MicroStrategy, 48,000 for Tesla, and 56,000 for Solana. Tesla is the cheapest asset to get to $1 million, but it's also riskier than Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the least risky. Tesla's the second least risky, but you can see it's cheaper if you want to get there. And I know people go grown, but again, hopefully I'll be here in 5 years so we can check my math. And if you check my old videos, my old predictions, they're interesting. Now, cost to be a millionaire by 2032, same exercise, modified price targets we covered previously, and here we go. You need 1.01 Bitcoin to be a millionaire in Bitcoin by 2032. Not bad, because the target will be nearly $1 million, just under $1 million. MicroStrategy, you need 210 shares. It'll cost you 54 grand. Tesla, 126.58 shares, $29,000 worth. And Solana, 335 tokens, 40,000. You'll see here, okay, just look at Tesla, for example. To get to be a millionaire, you need to spend nearly $49,000 to be able to exit and take your $1 million and run. But if you can wait till 2032, it'll only cost you $29,000. You're saving a truckload of money if you can wait. And that's the thing. The time in the market will be very, very crucial because of compounding and the miracle of that. That's the real point I want to get across here today from these brilliant questions on how important it is to stall that. Now, the other thing to think about too is if you have, say, a bag of any of these or combinations, which are what I recommend, is what I'm doing. I'm basically 95% in these 4 assets. That's it. It's not a secret. If you can stall your spending or your retirement or you're eating into that fund as long as possible and then extract little by little each year. Imagine, say hypothetically, Tesla goes to 8,000. Maybe that's 1 share is enough to live on for 2 months. Or if you can stall it, the whole asset bag will grow over time because of compounding. There'll come a stage where you might not even, heaven forbid, live long enough to spend all your Tesla or all your Bitcoin or anything else. And then you'll be able to borrow against it and other good stuff. So that's important to note. Now, here is the visual of the how much you need to be a millionaire by investing today in these different assets. Tesla, 29 grand. Solana, 40 grand. MicroStrategy, 54,000. Bitcoin, 81,000. So Bitcoin's the most expensive, but of course, the least risky per my analysis. Now, the very final chart of all these numbers is this one. Again, the delta, the savings difference to reach millionaire status, if you can stall from 2030 to 2032, is significant, very significant. On Bitcoin, you save 47,000. But remember, the cost basis is much lower. MicroStrategy, you save 50,000. Tesla, you save 20,000. But remember, the cost to get to your 2032 is a lot less than any of the other assets. And Solana, you save 15,000. Solana's not a big one. But again, MicroStrategy, you save the most, because I also do believe after 2030, the NAV premium will probably go to 0 unless they figure out other creative ways of making money off their massive Bitcoin bag, which is also possible. So remember, don't spend early. The opportunity cost of spending today is a lot higher than the opportunity cost of spending in 2030, which is also higher than the opportunity cost of spending in 2032. That's the message. And of course, the miracle of compounding. And with that, everybody, cheers all. Happy retirement. Happy planning for retirement. Remember, if you don't have a plan, you're toast. Get a plan. That's why I make these videos. So you can all start wrapping your heads around the miracles of compounding, allocations, how much you need to get to your goal, and how much you need to control your burn to achieve financial freedom. Thank you all. Hit the like if you enjoyed the show. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.